think anyone who has lived outside their home country can also understand that you're always going to feel, at least on a subconscious level, that you don't belong. And so my purpose has now become transformed into building the new Africa where my kids will consider themselves proud to be global Africa, to be Africans, to be global Africans. Shared value is talking about a new way to run business. It's actually a business strategy that says we want to reconnect profit with purpose. If you really want to be sustainable, particularly in today's changing world, you have to think about the community that you're working with. We know the Nigeria that we want to see. How can we work together?
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Spotlight Podcast. This podcast is for curious minds and aspiring innovators. We dive deep to discuss inspiring, informative, and offbeat conversations on technology and business. I'm your host, Iwalola Shoboale, and today we have with us Adeolu Adewumi-Zer. She is a seasoned strategist and accomplished business leader with over 2 decades of experience driving sustainable growth in African businesses. She's also the founder and managing director of ZER Consulting Africa. It's a pan-African consultancy and advisory firm dedicated to fostering sustainable growth in startups, scale-ups, and social enterprises. She is passionate about empowering Africa's next generation of leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers, fostering innovation and social impact. Welcome, Adeolu. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for honoring my invitation.
Of course, anything for you, Iwalola.
Thank you so much for being here. So before we get into the main conversation, the meat of the conversation, we have a little bit of an icebreaker.
Okay.
Where I will give you a couple of cards, and then the idea is for you to select a card. You're going to tell us the scenario that the card displays, and then walk us through how you would resolve that issue. So it's just for us to see how you think.
So
I'm sure you might have
test on Sunday.
Oh no.
All right.
So I'm sure you might have encountered one or two of these scenarios in the past. So I'll let you shuffle the cards so you know there's no ojoro.
All right, so let me see. So I'll take one.
Okay.
You find out that one of your top employees is selling your information and ideas to a competitor. What do you do? I think that one's fairly easy. That one's grounds for dismissal.
Really?
Very clearly.
Okay.
Grounds for dismissal.
Okay.
It's in any typical employment contract.
Yeah.
There's confidential information, there's
Okay.
an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. Something like this,
Yeah.
immediate grounds for dismissal.
Have you ever experienced that?
Not that I know of. So very happy to be working with people who wouldn't do something like this.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
great. Let's see if there's
One more?
a more difficult one.
All right, let's see. So you're pitching a futuristic tech concept to a skeptical audience. How do you grab their attention and sell the idea? Well, show and tell.
Okay.
It's always the best best way to sell an idea. I think there are two. There's either story, you can tell us the story to open any presentation, to sell any idea.
Yeah.
Other thing is if you can actually show something that is really eye-catching and grabbing. So
Yeah.
definitely, if I think it's really cool and futuristic, I would just start immediately with a demo.
Oh, nice. Awesome. So they just blow their minds immediately, like an Apple presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Love that.
They do that very well.
Yeah, awesome. So before, we get into the meat of the conversation, Adeolu, could you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you find yourself on this podcast today?
That's a good question. You tell me, how did I find myself? Well, anyone who knows me knows that I call myself a global Nigerian and a lifetime Afro-optimist. And these are not terms that I've taken on lightly. It's really started from a whole journey and a purpose that is during my journey of coming back to Africa and coming back specific to Nigeria. And so I left, or was taken from Nigeria at a very young age, at the age of 3, and grew up in the U.S. So I'm U.S. I'm not bred, but educated. I started my career in the U.S.
Okay.
But from the moment I landed on U.S. soil, I told my parents that I would be going back to Nigeria.
Really? At 3 years old?
Yes. So of course I can't remember it,
Yeah.
but my dad would tell you that it's been a constant proclamation of mine.
Yeah.
And I can remember in high school, I would tell my aunties and uncles, and they would look a bit skeptical, thinking, do you really know how it is in Nigeria? When I went to my final interview for what became my first job, I told the then managing director that I would open an office of that company in Nigeria. And when I entered that company, I told anyone who was willing to listen that I was going back to Nigeria.
Wow.
When I would start to date someone, I would let them know, hey, what's up? Just let you know that I'm going to Nigeria. So if you're not down with that, then this won't work. So it's really something, this dream, this North Star, something that really drove every aspect of my life. Okay. So starting out as an actuarial consultant, a pension actuary in the US, deciding to branch into to become an international HR management consultant. That's because I knew that I would be leaving the US. Okay. The reason I moved to Germany to open up an international team there, I had never been to Germany. The only thing I knew about Germany is what we learned in US history classes, which was not so pleasant. Yeah. And but I knew Germany was on the same time zone as Nigeria for half the year. Yeah. So I thought, okay, at least I'm getting closer. And so it took a lot longer than I thought. It took me, let's say, into my career. So in 2016, 2017 is when I took on an African-facing role. Nice. Running mergers and acquisitions across Africa. And a year later, in 2017 or 2018, I moved to Nairobi with my family. And so I thought, okay,
you're getting on the continent.
I've arrived. But the funny thing is that, because I've been dragging my family through this whole journey, dragging my husband through this whole journey. And we came to a point in 2020 when I had told him, you know what, I'm sitting on the board. We bought a company in Nigeria. I'm sitting on the board as a non-exec. I know that we have family now and kids. We don't want to be hopping from country to country. I'm okay if we stay in Kenya for a while. Okay. I think it must have been like 2 weeks later when my boss at the time called me and said, we need you in Nigeria.
Oh, my days.
And the dream finally came true. Yeah. And that's how in 2020, during COVID, I actually moved back home.
A self-fulfilling prophecy, I would say. So how has that been, the journey being in Nigeria? Does it live up to expectations?
For me, okay. I mean, I'm not saying that it lives up to expectations for everyone in my family. Yeah. But I've loved every minute of being back home. I've loved that my kids sort of had the childhood that I'd always imagined for myself. Okay. Although my dad would never have lived in Lagos, so not quite the same childhood. But they were 5 and 7 when we moved here. I was 3 when I left Nigeria. So it's sort of that same trajectory on the opposite side. Okay. And I'm sort of living the experience to them. Mm-hmm. And I can't say that I'll be in Nigeria forever. Life is too long. But what I will say is that I'm definitely on the continent for good. Okay. There's really nothing that could drag me away. Okay. And as long as my kids are happy, I'm happy.
I love that. So I think on a lighter note, you're basically the reverse japa. Do you know what that is?
Yes, I know what that is. And
you're basically doing the reverse japa.
Yeah, and it's something that people have questioned. They say, you were in the US, you were in Europe. Why would you ever want to come back to Africa? Why would you want to ever come back to Nigeria? And I think that it really comes down to human nature, right? You always want, or humans tend to want what they didn't have. And there are a lot of people in sort of my age group, generation, whatever, that are coming back, returnees. Across the continent. Yeah. And I know many people in the diaspora who want to come back and are looking for a way to come back. And that's sort of the natural flow. And I think that that's actually healthy for an economy. I mean, there's other things that are not so healthy that are going on. But in terms of the sort of talent transfer that needs to happen, whatever country you're in, even if you're in the US, you need to get out of the US and actually experience other cultures, work in other cultures, because that's how we spread understanding as global citizens. Yeah.
So what would you say, or have you been able to identify what makes Nigeria so special, I guess, in specifically, or Africa as a whole?
For me,
yes.
Well, it's the only place I can really call home, right? I've never felt that the US was my home. If you ask my friends who grew up with me, they will tell you that I never called myself an American. I still don't. If someone would ask me where I'm from, I say I'm Nigerian. And I think anyone who has lived outside their home country can also understand that for the most part, especially if you're obviously a foreigner, so you have different skin color or features than the norm in that country, you're always going to feel, at least on a subconscious level, that you don't belong. And that was always the case. I was always the other. Whether it's the other, the only Black person, the only woman, the only young person, the only African. I spent a whole lifetime of always being the other.
Okay.
And now I'm not. Okay, maybe sometimes I'm still also the only woman, but I feel much more at home here. And I love the fact that my kids as well haven't ever had to feel. I mean, although they're biracial, so they don't look exactly like what they might see around them, but they have enough people who look like them around them, so that they feel perfectly
At home.
at
I
home
love that.
in their skins. Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. So in your journey, I guess, through life, you've mentioned a couple of roles that you've taken on. What would you say have been your career highlights?
Well, I've been blessed with a really wonderful career, but there are definitely some milestones that have really brought me to where I am, and I think I would want to talk about 4 of them.
Okay.
So the first one was the first international move.
Okay.
So it's very tough to reach my North Star and get back home if I never leave the U.S. So that the first move was very important about 8 years into my career. And then I would say the second highlight was transitioning from more of a back office people HR type of role to a front facing business role. That was really also a career opener for me, in terms of, at one point, my end goal was to become a chief HR officer.
Okay.
Right. And then move into the business side, the options became much more varied for me and open for me. So I would say that was the second one. Third one was actually moving back to the continent, right? Because that was finally, for me, the realization of a dream. By that time, I had opened myself to the possibility of being a global African, like I said, a global Nigerian, as opposed to being just a Nigerian. And so the fact that I felt that we need to work together as Africans from various different countries for the good of our continent. And it's not Nigeria versus Ghana, Kenya versus Uganda, South Africa versus Namibia, but it's all of us working together. So coming back to the continent was very important. And then the last one, up to now, I still have a very long career, God willing, in front of me, is becoming CEO of Nigeria, or CEO of Nigeria, as my sister likes to call it. So that was me coming home.
Amazing.
And that's definitely been a highlight.
Awesome. So could you tell us a little bit more about ZER? How did you get to building ZER, and what's ZER doing for us in Africa?
Yeah, it was actually an interesting journey, because I think even a year ago, Gia told me that I'd be branch out on my own to launch my own consulting firm. I said no. And I've had many people encourage me or ask me whether that's something I would consider, and my answer was always no. I like the security of a 9 to 5 and full-time employment and all that. It was always my husband who was the business guy, who was willing to take that risk. But last year, I sort of went on this long, intentional journey of figuring out, okay, what next? Now I was home. Now I was back on the continent. What is my new North Star? And as it tends to be for many mothers, many parents, it turned to become my kids, right? And what kind of world did I want to leave for them? What kind of continent did I want to leave for them? And so my purpose has now become transformed into building the new Africa, where my kids will consider themselves proud to be global to be Africans, to be global Africans. And what does that mean? And how can I be part of that journey for them? They are 10 and 8 now, so to adulthood, I have about 10 years or so. And but you can do a lot in a decade. And so thinking about what can I do in a decade, and thinking about the career trajectory that I've had and the opportunities I've had, I felt like I wanted to give that back to the next generation. and the current generation. And advisory and consulting was the best way that I thought I could do that. It was where I started as a consultant. And even if I look back in my career on the corporate side, most of the roles that I've taken were also very much consulting type, project type roles. So it was a place that I felt very much at home. And so it became a natural step to then think about, instead of working to build other people's businesses, 10 years from now, and looking back and saying, okay, now I'm ready, but now I don't have the energy. Let me start now. Let me start today to build my own business. All that energy that I bring in, all that passion that I bring in, all that motivation and dedication, let me focus it on my own thing and helping others feel that.
I should probably share at this point how we met, if you don't mind me sharing. Yeah. So we met through WIMBIZ, Women in Business, and so on and so forth. It was a mentorship program. So Adeolu was, I think I drew the lucky straw. Adeolu was assigned to be my mentor, and we just had some really, I think I would recall the first conversation I had with Adeolu, and I was really just inspired by her career path and the fact that she kept talking about Africa, and she wanted to make an impact in Africa, despite the fact that with her extensive background, she was being offered a lot of opportunities to join like amazing businesses, right? So my question now is, Adeolu, so you've talked about what brought you to ZER. I'd love to know, what are the success stories you've seen so far with ZER already? What are the things that are keeping you going, that are keeping you driving towards the goal that you've set for yourself?
It's really seeing the change that I'm making on an individual level.
Okay.
I'm not trying to change the world. I think that's a very grand goal, and I admire people who are trying to change the world. But I do very much believe in that there's an adage about, if you throw one what's the little like crab back in in the ocean, you've changed the world for that one little crab. And so that's how I see it. So one person by person, individual by individual, company by company, what kind of change can I bring about? How can I help? And I do believe that being a consultant, being an advisor is a life of service. And so I'm here to serve others. So when people come across my path, and I already had the opportunity to work with certain organizations where there are certain issues, and a lot of the issues boils down to the loneliness that one feels at the top, and not having someone to talk to about the problems at hand. And I want to be that trusted advisor where the CEO, the founder, feels like, okay, I have someone who's been in my shoes, who knows what I'm talking about, who can give me another perspective, an external perspective, and be that sounding board. And I feel that connection we're already building with some of the organizations I work with. And this is really what motivates me from day to day.
Awesome. So what's this notion of shared value that you're working towards now? So that's really why we have this podcast here today. Adeolu is going to talk to us about shared value and what she's doing around that.
Yeah, so shared value is a concept that came across my path only in 2021. In the beginning of 2021, when I stumbled across a masterclass, and I thought, oh, shared value, this sounds interesting. It sounds like it might sort of jibe with my own personal philosophy. And so I attended the masterclass. It's the first time I attended a masterclass. I'm still not sure today what a difference is between a masterclass and a normal webinar. But anyway, let's leave that aside. And I really connected with the message. And so I reached out to the organizer, Tiki Barnard, is her name. She's a South African woman, to learn more. And we connected. She asked me to introduce her next program, which I did. She asked me to join them at the annual summit in Johannesburg and to speak on a panel. And this was all in 21. And then in 22, we kept the connection. And then end of 22, she came back to me and said, actually, I want to sort of launch shared value in Nigeria, and I'm looking for a partner. and you seem like the perfect partner. So it was an interesting journey. This sort of random event and random connection turned into a big event that we wanted to launch in Nigeria. And what is shared value? So shared value is talking about a new way to run business. It's actually a business strategy that says we want to reconnect profit with purpose, right? Profit, people usually know what you mean by profit. You want to make money. To be sustainable, you need to make money. But the point that shared value says is that if you really want to be sustainable, particularly in today's changing world, you have to think about the community that you're working within, right? And how are you creating value, not just for your shareholders, but other stakeholders around you? How are you creating value for your employees? How are you creating value for your customers? How are you creating value even for the community that's around you in terms of even things like pollution or the jobs that you're giving for that community, etc. So this is the concept of shared value that we want to bring to Nigeria. I think Nigeria is also looking and also hungry for a new way to do business, for a new way for business to drive change. Because I really do believe that for all the power that we think government has, it's really business. And perhaps I'm biased because I'm coming from the business world, but I think that's only business that can actually drive the change that we need to do.
Awesome. So you've just explained the concept of shared value, and I'd like you to please tell us what the initiative is trying to accomplish. Do you have certain goals that you'd like to speak about?
Yes. So we're just bringing it to Nigeria. So shared value came out of the US, was developed at the Harvard Business School, actually, by two professors there. Tiki brought it into Africa via South Africa. And now we want to spread it into the concept into other countries. So Nigeria being the newest one after Kenya. And what I want to focus on here in Nigeria and shared value, there are shared value partners in other continents as well, Australia, India, Italy, etc. And each country has to be very customized as to how they bring the concepts into the country. What will work in one country may not work in another. And so as we launch here to Nigeria, I want this to be about collaboration, because there are a lot of great organizations doing really good things around impact, around sustainability, around ESG, in already here in Nigeria. And so I don't think it's not saying that shared value is better or even different, but it's saying that let's bring all those concepts together. We know the Nigeria that we want to see. How can we work together from a business point of view, but working in collaboration with civil service organizations, with government, with whomever wants to be part of this conversation to really bring about that change.
Okay. So what kind of success stories do you think we'll see going forward? So what can a business benefits from being a part of this initiative?
So I think there are three areas, right? So first of what I need to emphasize is that shared value is not about philanthropy. It's not about CSR. Those are very worthy areas and causes. And of course, there's a reason that we need to give money, to give charity, to do CSR initiatives. But shared value goes beyond that. It really talks about how can business be a force for good, right? So that means there has to be a win-win. It doesn't work if business isn't business. If business is not making money, right?
The bottom line has to be met.
The bottom line has to be met. But it doesn't say that because the bottom line is being met, that the society should just be left in the lurch and should suffer. So basically, the value I see for companies is one around the brand, right? Because we're already into Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha were born in 2004. That means 2000. And so that means the oldest ones are already becoming teenagers, right? And those teenagers are very adamant about the type of world and the expectations they have around companies, and even already by Gen Z. So companies that focus on, or that they think are destroying the environment, or think are destroying societies or other issues are very quickly, let's say, destroyed. Maybe that's too strong a word. Canceled. It's cancel culture, right? And on social media.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that companies need to be very quickly aware of, is that how quickly you can be canceled, as you say. And so when you think about building your brand, when you think about brand equity, you need to think about the value that you're putting out into the universe, and that people see that you're putting out into the universe, and how are you communicating that value. So that's the first. Second is around just the community that you're trying to build, right? So the bigger the economy is, the more money you're going to make, right? So, and how do you make the economy bigger? You want people to have jobs, and you want people to have money to spend.
Yeah.
When people have jobs and they have money to spend,
they're going to spend.
They're going to spend it, right? That's just human nature.
Yeah.
There are not many cultures who like to save, so they'll spend. And so your business will actually grow because you're building a community that has money. You're building an economy via the shared value concept. And so that's that's your branding, that's the community building that you're doing, which is then going to the sustainable growth that you want to see in your company.
Amazing. So shared values putting more responsibility on businesses to actually grow the economy and the social landscape for the businesses, right?
Yeah. And not saying that it's all the government's work.
Yeah.
It can't be the government.
Yeah. So how do we see that, like, practically? So say I own a business and I hear this and I'm really interested in the notion of shared value. I'm really interested in also investing in making sure that the society, what I'm trying to do also aligns with what the society needs. What exactly do I do? Do I just reach out to Shared Value Initiative, or am I going to join a community? What does that look like?
So that's what we want to discuss. How do we want that to look like in Nigeria?
Okay.
There are countries that put out thought leadership, because that's what the companies are looking for. They say, we want to know what other companies are doing. We want to know what other countries are doing. We want to see the data. We want to see that where there's progress, etc. And there's other countries that say, well, we don't even have any clue what we're supposed to do. So help us, teach us what this is, build capacity within our organizations. Let's do some best practice sharing with other organizations who are further along with us. And then you have other countries that say, well, we just want to get together. We just want a community. We sort of know what we're doing, but we want to make sure we're not all alone. So let's, get together, exchange, come together for events, bring our CEOs together, our strategy people, etc. So we want to, when we launch this month, we want to have that conversation with the business community to come with our ideas, but also listen to hear what is it that the market wants.
Awesome. So I'd love to know some case studies around the shared value. You mentioned it's Tiki. Yeah. So this is something that's worked in other African countries. What success stories have they seen?
Yeah, so there are two I want to highlight, and one is, and funnily enough, they were both initiatives started in 2007, so already 17 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been a while. Yeah. The first one is Leapfrog, and actually, and in both companies I'd admired for quite a long time before I even knew about shared value. But so Leapfrog Investments is actually a private equity firm. And most times when you hear private equity, you don't think of companies who are trying to do good. You think of companies who are just trying to make money. That's trying to make money. And Leapfrog, if you go to their website, they were very, very obvious with that profit with purpose, and they're very proud of that fact. So it's the first thing they have on the website, in bold, profit with purpose. That's what the organization is all about. Whenever they speak at events, whenever they put out thought leadership, it's always with that profit with purpose message. And the 4 KPIs that they show also on their website. So the first screen you see, if you're on your phone, profit with purpose, and you see KPIs. And you'll see one KPI around revenue. You'll see one KPI around growth, but you also see a third and fourth KPI around jobs that they've implemented across their portfolio companies. You'll see another KPI around, I can't think about it right now, but you'll see those 4 KPIs. So
Okay.
2 of them will be sort of financial KPIs,
Okay.
and the 2 will be societal KPIs.
Okay.
And they track those.
Okay.
And so I really admire the fact that they've been very intentional about the fact that, yes, we're a business. We're going to make money for you as our shareholder, but we're going to do it in a way that we believe is right.
Awesome. So
So
make money. I will make sure that the society is able to generate more money for us to make money,
is
and the
exactly,
business is more
and
sustainable,
and it's a
and the
virtual
cycle
circle.
continues.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I mentioned that one because the founder is actually a South African,
Okay.
based in Australia now, but a South African, so from diaspora. And then the second one is Safaricom with M-Pesa. So if you've ever been to Kenya, you probably can't go to Kenya without hearing about M-Pesa.
Yeah.
And I had read about M-Pesa already in The Economist back in like 2008, 2009. And I was so excited about this. I was like, wow, mobile money. This would be so cool. And I remember I was in Germany at the time, and I was telling someone about this, a former colleague, and he was looking at me in puzzlement thinking, yeah, but we have credit cards. Like, why do we need this? And then 15 years later, with Apple Pay, we have this Google Pay, we have all these things. And M-Pesa came way before that, and this is a Kenyan company. So M-Pesa is the largest mobile money company in the developing world, and even bigger than those Apple Pays and et cetera coming from the developed world.
Yeah. I think I hear their penetration is in the high 90s in Kenya.
Yeah,
Yeah,
quite
like
high.
literally no one does not have.
The first thing I did on my first business trip to
Okay.
Kenya was to buy a cheap phone so that I can get a SIM card so that I can get M-Pesa.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So we've talked about the success stories. What do you see the challenges being like, and how can we overcome them in adopting shared value?
Yeah, so I think the challenges will be around misconceptions.
Okay.
Around when people hear shared value, thinking that, okay, it's another CSR concept, it's ESG, and I don't want to waste money on that, so to say.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with me as a business. And so this will be the misconception that we're already seeing, which we need to help people understand that that's not the case, that this is actually a very competitive strategy that will be critical if we want to move forward as Nigerians in today's world.
Yeah. So, and I think that's definitely a great point. And I think what will probably need to be spelled out for lots of like organizations, CEOs, is to see that the market seems to be shrinking if we look at how businesses are like running out of Nigeria. So we actually need to work hand in hand with the government and see how we can help the market grow, give people more disposable income so everyone can get a share of that disposable income, right? So yeah, that's very interesting. So the next question is on the opportunities. So how do you see us driving shared value, driving profitability, and all the other KPIs that businesses are tracking through shared value?
Well, it's like what I said before. So it's really, and it's not going to be a copy paste initiative. No strategy, no business strategy that's worth the salt can be a copy paste. We can learn from what other companies are doing, and actually at the launch we will have Safari come and talk about what they're doing with M-Pesa. We'll have another company called Discovery from South Africa. This will also talk about what they're doing with shared value, so we can learn from what other companies are doing and how they've implemented. But where company A is in their shared value journey will be very different than how company B is in their shared value and what they want to achieve. It has to fit into each own global or company-wide company strategy. So this needs to be embedded. So these are the conversations that we want to have individually with each of the companies that are supporting us to say, okay, here are our thoughts. Let's talk about where you are in the shared value journey. And it's not about talking to the chief sustainability officer, as I mentioned. It's really talking to the strategy person, the finance person, because this has to be embedded into your core business practices.
Awesome. So what does the roadmap look like for the shared value initiative? So you mentioned the launch. So what can we expect to happen after that?
So after that, we very quickly want to bring the strategy and finance folks together. Given that we're already in June, people are getting to school holidays and summer holidays and all that. Probably in September is what we're looking at to bring it into really a working working session and talk about like how do we want to really embed shared value in Nigeria. We don't want this to be another membership organization.
Okay.
Because I think we have enough of those, and the value of each of those I think is can be disputed.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is actually say, well, this is the service that we can provide. This is how we can help you in that journey. And based on that, we'll place a value on it and let's move forward together.
Okay. And I believe the government is also involved in this roadmap. Are you working with any government agencies or bodies?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But
Okay.
Yes, as I mentioned, the government has to be a key piece of this conversation.
Okay. So in terms of government, who do you think would be who would be the person in the government, or what agencies in the government should be a part of this?
That's something we have to discuss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are many different organizations, thankfully, within the government that are focused around this whole impact topic.
Okay.
So I don't think it's working with one or the other.
Okay.
Again, I want to focus on collaboration. Let's bring us all together.
Okay.
Let's cut the silos. We don't need silos anymore. The problem is too big.
Yeah. Okay. Say we are all working together, we collaborate, and we're doing a lot of thought leadership on this. What do you see happening in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, in 5 years, what I'd want to see is that we have actually shared value leaders
Okay.
in Nigeria. So the same way that we talk about Leapfrog, the same way we talk about Safaricom, the same way we talk about Discovery, and other organizations outside of the African continent, we have too many companies in Nigeria for Nigeria to be left out of this conversation. Let's have a Nestle, a Unilever, a Dangote, a whomever, to be part of that shared value conversation and to be known in the global world that this is a shared value champion. And let's have more than one, so multiple. So in 5 years, and then in 10 years, it's to me it's continent-wide, right? It's going back to what I said about Nigerians. We also can't live in a silo. Even if 1 in 5 Africans is Nigerian, 4 and 5 are not. So we will only move forward if we move together. And so how can we spread this concept of business as a force for good, of reconnecting profit with purpose across the continent?
Yeah. Do you see any role or any space for like tech businesses or tech startups in the shared value initiative?
I actually think that tech companies and can lead the way, right? So leapfrogging has become a concept that a term has become popular in the last 10 years, using Africa as an example many times. So for example, most African countries moved very quickly to mobile phones well before Western countries did, because they didn't have all that old infrastructure to rely on. And so the same way here, the tech companies and many startups, not just tech companies, but many startups, don't have all those legacy issues having to hold them back, the old way of doing things, the old way of mindsets. They can move faster. They can lead the way. I don't think that there's any coincidence that there was a telecoms company like Safaricom with M-Pesa that led the way in Kenya. So a Money Point, InterSwitch, whomever, I don't want to call any companies, but they can also lead the way in this conversation.
Awesome. So what more can we expect from ZER, in coming years, and from you, I guess?
Yeah. So I mean, ZER is more than just shared value. Of course, I mean the shared value in Nigeria. We want shared value to be part of everything we're doing, and we think that's the case. But we're building to ZER Consulting Africa to really help companies build what I call African excellence for the global stage. And this is really my passion for the company. So to really be a Pan-African leader in helping build that excellence, so that when companies think about, I remember back in the day, I think it was the 90s, when made in the USA used to be a thing, right? Of quality, of pride. Oh, wow, it's made in the US. As opposed to made in China, used to mean like, oh, it's cheap.
But now it's changing.
But now it's changing, right? And what could made in Africa? So whether it's made in Nigeria, made in Kenya, made in Uganda, made in wherever, Egypt, but what can made in Africa? What can we stand for? And why can't we stand for business for good? And that I want ZER to be part of that conversation.
I love that. I love that so much. Okay, so if I'm a young professional or a young entrepreneur, what advice would you give to me? I'm looking to, incorporate shared value from the ground up and building something. What advice would you give to me?
I would say first learn from what others are doing,
Okay.
and learn the good and the bad. So learn what others are doing, which you don't want to incorporate into what you're doing, and also learn from the leaders in this space. And then also just talk to people like me, talk to people like Tiki, talk to others who are already in the shared value community. And we're always happy to provide some advice.
Awesome. So for people or businesses looking to take part in the shared value launch, is that an opportunity for that, or how can they take part in it?
Very limited opportunity, but you're
Okay.
always welcome to reach out to me and
Okay.
to see what we can do.
Okay. Would you want to share your handles? Where can they reach you?
Sure. So on LinkedIn, I can be reached at my name, Adeolu Adewumi-Zer, or at ZER Consulting Africa. And Instagram, I'm also on those two handles, so my name all together, or at ZER Consult. I would say those are the two best ways to reach me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll round up here. Final question. Any final words of advice, words of wisdom, or if you'd like to share something else that you're working on that you'd just like to put forward?
Yeah, so I'm just closing on a couple big engagements, and so I will be looking to expand the team over the second part of the year. So just be a lookout. I'll be looking for probably a strategic assistant and a social media manager. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, and you're what we talked about today also appeals to your own why, then please reach out.
And that wraps up another insightful episode of the Spotlight Podcast. Thank you so much, Adeolu, for coming on the show and talking to us about the Shared Value Initiative. For our listeners, I hope you found this discussion as insightful as I have, and you can reach out to Adeolu if you are interested in taking part in the initiative. But before you go, please be sure to like, subscribe, share the episode, support us, leave a comment, and ask any questions that you'd like to.